Hey, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
So are you a lifer?
Well, I'm still serving time.
Welcome once again to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast. Every week, we two guys get together and we talk about records for the vinyl community.
Yeah, because we just don't know what else really to talk about.
There we go. Well, it's our lives. We're lifers.
Yes, we are. We are the lifers.
My name is Jim, and I am a record store owner.
And I am Steve, a record collector.
How's it going this week, sir?
I think pretty good. We just found out that each of our pets got us up at 3 a.m. this morning.
That's right.
So, if there's slight pauses, it's just our taking a little bit of a nap.
Some slurring of the words. It's not early eggnog or anything of that nature.
Yes, exactly.
It's just tired dudes talking about records.
Yes, maybe that'll be our title. Two tired dudes talking about records.
Oh, I'm going to put some Floyd on now, Steve.
Yeah,
there we go. Take a nap. So we've got a interesting topic this week to cover. And this has been kind of percolating for a while. Yeah. And we've talked about this in the store, I think, for a couple of years now, about the type of record collector that each of us are. What type of collector are you?
And how we've changed or morphed in life.
Yes, and I think a lot of collectors tend to go through that. It's an evolutionary thing, really, with the way that you bring in records, and probably any other type of collectible, I'd guess, too. But we're not two guys talking about Star Wars figures or baseball cards.
We'll just do it to records. But it will fall into any kind of category. Yeah, you can plug it in.
You can take it in that direction if you so desire.
Yes.
But because this is a vinyl community podcast, each week we talk about things that the vinyl community folks really like to talk about and show off, and that is our pickups of the week.
Yes.
You got some goodies?
I do. I would say a big, giant box came in because somebody there was this online sale for like 40% off. Yeah, one of them too. And it's like, oh my God. So I'm not going to go through all those. I'm going to take some highlights here. One was I picked up here at Radio Wasteland, the Fela Kuti box set number 6.
Number 6. Now, do you have 1 through 5?
I do not have 1 and 2, which is too bad because those go for big dollars. Oh. After that, everyone figured out, hey, this sells, and they began producing a whole lot more of them.
So number 5 was the one we found.
We got number 6.
6,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yes, so I have 4, 5, and 6, actually.
Okay.
I used to have 3, but that's gone out of bounds now.
Now, for the uninitiated, folks are saying, what did he get? No, Fela, what?
Yeah.
Fela Kuti is an interesting individual.
He is. He had 80 wives. I guess he got tired after that. He had his own compound down in Nigeria, but he made some of the best Afro-funk music ever. He was a saxophonist, and each album is basically 2 songs. He does, a full side on each one. So it's a jam and it's a groove that you get into with his music, a real groove. And it's very political. He was highly political. I mean, the army came in and burned down his compound at one time because he did declare himself an independent nation. So, he had some interesting things. And, if he had his band, the African 70, then in the 80s it became the African 80s. Fantastic music, though. Really cool stuff.
And this box set is how big?
It's 6 different albums are in there with a book. So, in each box set's like that, they're being curated by different people.
And this being the 6th in the series, he was really that prolific of a album release.
He would put out 3, 4, 5 albums a year. Wow. It goes just to the fact that each album only had 2 songs, so he's just thinking about it. And when they get in, it's all about creating that groove. So you can go on for 20 minutes and just this groove just keeps on going, and he throws in his lyrics here and there, and then you toss in some solos, and he put out a lot of albums.
Well, cool.
I also, probably the one I'm really obsessed with is I picked up The Rain Parade put out a new album this year.
Okay. I saw your video this morning. I did not realize that.
I did not either. And actually, I was looking on Discogs because I have the very first Rain Parade, but I only have the vinyl. And I've been trying to get an original back in. They haven't really repressed it. And so I'm looking else and I go, wait. They put out a new album. I didn't even know they were back together again. It's called Last Rays of a Dying Sun. and it is wonderful. I mean, I have been obsessed with playing that. It's so good. It is Paisley Underground. For those that don't know the Rain Parade, that's probably the best example of Paisley Underground music, which was taking 60s psych and, updating it for the 80s. And so this is a continuation. They're obviously a lot older, but they have gotten themselves back together, and it's a wonderful album.
Oh, cool.
A couple other pickups were a group called Civic, and it is a kind of a rock punk band out of Australia. And their new album's called Taken by Force. It's just fun stuff. It's kind of rock, kind of punk, a little mix in there, but it's charging. It just takes off and goes. It has a guy surfing on the front, so I thought, oh, maybe there's some surf music. Nah, it's not surf music. It's just punk, but very well done. Excellent album. And the final one I just want, this came out this year also from the Hives. It was Death of Randy Fitzsimmons.
Okay.
Their new Hives album. And I haven't bought a Hives album in a number of years. But this was like on 50% off. So I said, well, let me just try it. And it's really good. Cool. I was very happy with it. So, and then I have just like this huge stack of other stuff.
Always the better when you can get a bargain on something.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
And there was. In this time of year, there is. I mean, there was that one, Sound of Vinyl, I think. Hey, we're giving away free albums. You just have to pay $9 for shipping. $9 for shipping. They're making a little money off it, but still they're losing money given, for that. So there's been a lot of good deals. But what about you? I'm sure you found something.
I have, but it was another light week. How's that? Things got a little busier here at the store, so the intake was slowed down a little bit as we're concentrating our efforts on moving stuff out. But earlier this year, The Alarm released a new album called Forwards, and I got a couple for the store, and I was a little skeptical, but listened to one of them. It's actually good. I mean, much like you mentioned with the Rain Parade, these guys have been together forever, and they've updated their sound, but they still kind of hold true to that core. So there was another Alarm album from 2018 called Equals that I saw. Again, it was on sale, and I thought, well, if I liked this newest one, I probably will like this one as well. Picked that up, and I do like it. It's not as good, I think, as their 80s stuff. Yeah. Very powerful and political, college radio rock. Not quite jangle because they're British, right?
Yeah.
But still good alternative music. And this one that I picked up, Equals, is a worthy addition to the Alarm collection.
Okay.
Then secondly, this was another one, and as we talk about what type of record collector we are, I've been contemplating my They Might Be Giants collection and looking at holes and trying to fill those in. Just reissued, I think just a couple of months ago, was their 2007 album, The Else. And this time they put this out on what's called Mystery Smoke vinyl. And I do have a lot of other They Might Be Giants reissues on the multicolored vinyl. And I had a black vinyl copy of this, an older one. It wasn't an original, but a reissue. So I thought, I'm going to upgrade on this one. So I picked up The Else by They Might Be Giants. It's one of their more obscure albums. Not a lot of songs that you would have been familiar with from TMBG, other than something like The Mesopotamians is on here, or Careful What You Pack. So slowly but surely I'm working my way through the They Might Be Giants catalog. I've got the core ones, which are the important ones from the early 80s that I like their Self-Titled and Flood. But now I'm thinking maybe I want to pick up some more of these newer ones down the line. And this one was the second one I picked up this week, and I'm really happy with it.
Someone's sounding like they're a completist.
It could be.
Yes.
Could be. And that, dear listeners, is the scope of our discussion this week. But I do want to remind everybody first that the albums that we talk about, both in our pickups and if we mention a few things here or there throughout the discussion, we'll put up a Spotify playlist so we can give you guys a little bit of an idea of what it is we're listening to. We don't include the sound samples in our podcast for copyright reasons, just to kind of stay clear of that. And we don't want a headache. This is supposed to be fun, and I don't want to be dealing with that kind of stuff. So we'll do the Spotify playlist on the backside of it, so you can listen to these things that we talk about.
And Lord knows how long the podcast would go if we tossed a bunch of samples in there.
It would go crazy.
Yes.
So, but yeah, you mentioned being a completist. Now, what does that mean exactly? And this subject matter of what kind of vinyl collector are you is something that's kind of intriguing because, as we mentioned at the top of the show, I think it's kind of an evolutionary process. You may start off as someone who's just been in this forever, or you're starting to get back into it, or you're just discovering it. But no matter what, you've got some classifications for folks as far as what you think the type of collectors that there are out there. And I think toward the end, we'll gauge what we feel we are. How's that sound?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So a completist, this person is considered that usually they go after just a handful of artists, but they want everything that they have. Even they try to get the different color variants. It's just, so they can look at this collection, I have it all. And obviously you can start fairly easy, but as you get more and more into it, it becomes more and more obscure, which is like anything, but it starts getting harder and harder to find. But the other thing is a completist can have, 5, 6 of the same album because they're a little different.
And this gets more complex as we've talked about with artists that have been around for decades.
Yeah.
We did our Stones and the top favorite Stones, or, Floyd for me or Rush for me. This gets much more difficult. But then if you burrow down deeper, and I think we mentioned the Police album Synchronicity. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine attempting to be a completist with that one, for crying out loud?
Yeah. How about Bob Dylan or Neil Young?
Yeah.
I mean, how much stuff do they continue? Especially Neil Young. It's like every other month. Here's another Neil Young.
Yes, there was one this week, too.
Yes. Oh, my God, really? Well, that's only like 10 albums this year. And they keep finding this stuff. But there are people that they buy every, because it's important. That person's the most important person to them, and they want it all because it brings them great enjoyment.
Do you consider yourself to be a completist with any artists?
I don't. I would say there's some I'm fairly close to. The Cramps would be one. I do buy a lot, but I don't feel a need to have all the different, there's all kinds of bootlegs with the Cramps.
Oh, yeah.
If I get one, that's fine, but I'm not out searching, trying to find them. It used to be Talking Heads. I had quite a bit of their stuff. I had some of their 12-inch. But where I fall off on the completist is I'm just not obsessed with trying to find it and needing it. If it's there, that's great. If it's not, you know what? I'll forget about it by tomorrow.
And I think you can take this to different levels of completism. How's that? I'm inventing words here. You mentioned 12 inches. Okay, do you stop at LPs? Do you start getting 12 inches? Do you bring in 7 inches or 45s? How far do you take this delve into an artist that is important to you?
True.
And, okay, I'm going to be obvious here and say, okay, Rush. Mm-hmm. I might be considered to be a completist on Rush, both in their catalog as well as with a couple of certain releases, but I don't think I'm quite as obsessed as some people that I know of that dive into this type of collection stuff. So Discogs makes this easy. I can call up all my Rush albums or all my Rush entries and scroll down, and this says that be careful here. It says I have 85 entries from Rush in my Discogs.
Wow.
So, but that's mostly albums. I got a few box sets. I have 1 or 2 7-inch singles, nothing terrible in there. But with Permanent Waves, and we've talked, that's my favorite, I've got 5 versions of that right now. I've got my original US version. I've got an original Canadian version with the headline attached to it. I've got a 2015 200-gram reissue version. I've got a Mobile Fidelity version of Permanent Waves, and then I've got the anniversary box set, the big one. Could I get more? Maybe, but I don't think that I need to. I think in this instance, I'm looking at not so much as many copies of one release of Permanent Waves as there are what kind of different versions of that, being the Mobile Fidelity, being the Canadian, because there are significant differences to those. So I think that's where I draw the line with my completism on that particular album and with Rush.
I did a video earlier in the week about doubles that I've bought, buying the same album twice, maybe 3 times. But one of the commenters put in, he goes, there's one album, I have 9 versions of it. If this is it's an album he wanted, and, he's been buying a lot of them. Now, you could just take any more right now, just one album from one artist and get 12, 15 copies.
yeah.
We're going to make 100 of this, 100 of that. I mean, it's their way of kind of going after completists, shall we say.
Look at Taylor Swift. Let's
Yeah.
bring her up again with the latest Midnights, not latest, earlier in this year, Midnights album. There were 4 different versions of that with 4 different covers and 4 different color vinyl. The reissue she just did of 1989 Taylor's version, at least 4 different. I think there was probably some more different versions of that. She knows what she's doing. She's going after that hardcore fan and the people that want to be a completist. The difference is, I think with some of these older artists, Rush, yes, their older stuff gets some tremendous value to it, but typically you can find them halfway decent priced for used vinyl in the $20 to $30 range. Some are a little crazy, I will admit. They go up into the hundreds, but for the most part, they're there. But Swift stuff is all new vinyl, $40 to $50 each.
Lana Del Rey does the same thing.
Oh,
She
yeah.
constantly is changing her covers, and even it'll come out 4 or 5 months later. I got same album. Here's a new cover version, and some of them go for a lot of money.
So the completist is either a person who strives to have as many versions of a particular release as they can get a hold of, or I think more logically, a completist is somebody who likes a group. And again, I'll take Rush or not even Pink Floyd, for example, where it's not necessarily every copy of every album, but maybe multiples of one, but at least one of every other one from their catalog. Side note, I did the same thing with Pink Floyd that I did with Rush and called them all up, and scrolling down, I see 65 entries for Pink Floyd in my collection. So close second.
Miles Davis would be one for me where I have a lot. I mean, but for Miles Davis, I just wanted one of each of his albums, and I wasn't looking for everything else. Now, if it's a MoFi, I may buy it, but that's going to be it.
Outside of completist, what are some of the other categories that we're looking at here for collectors?
Well, one's called the Lifer.
Yep.
And the Lifer, which is what we started with, it doesn't mean you're in jail. I mean, well, it does for some, but
could conceivably.
Exactly. So for those of you listening from the penitentiary, this we're dealing with vinyl here, okay? It is basically it's a diehard collector who really spends their time looking for deals. And they really understand what the albums are worth. They've been doing this forever, and it's just their excitement. They don't need to have something of everything, but they're out there looking for something great, and they can spot it.
They're always on the hunt for grails. And you and I know people that, for whatever reason, they can sniff these things out, whether it be a garage sale or an estate sale or even a thrift store. They know, and it's almost like these types of releases show up to them.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to bring up Michael Christensen again because I've gone out record shopping with him. He can sniff stuff out. It's just amazing. He pulls out, we're just going in one store. He goes, vertical swirl. Really? A vertical swirl? I mean, he just found it. It was right there. He knew it. He was looking, and he really knows. I can't say I'm that good at it. I'm Mr. Blind by all. Let me just see what this is like. And, I grab, but some they have so much knowledge in that head. It's fascinating to watch him.
That's cool to hear about Michael, and it's neat that he's got that capability. I feel that I'm working my way towards that. It helps being immersed in it every day here at the store because I see so much vinyl come through. But I've had my moments where, we mentioned thrift stores, and I picked up a Rationals. You remember this story because you got the copy of that.
Yeah.
In a middle of in a thrift store in the middle of the eastern UP of Michigan. Stopped in on my way by once and was looking through piles and piles of Mitch Miller and Dollar Bin or worse Christmas music, and I thought, well, what about this one here? And I looked, and there was a Rationals album, the Michigan group, the Rationals, and it was autographed, and it was in great shape. I like to think that I'm getting better at that. I've been a lifer too, because I've been collecting vinyl since the 80s, and I think that as we progress in this discussion, each of us has gotten rid of or lost portions of a collection over time, only to try to bring it back in. So am I a lifer? Maybe just because the longevity of my collecting is yours as well.
Exactly. Well, you can be several types because you think, okay, so you are completist on some, but that's just a couple groups. Overall, you fall into another category. because, again, you kind of know what you're looking for.
I would like to really develop the skills, though, that some people have where they can say right off the top, that is this is worthless, this is great.
Yeah.
But that's a great skill.
That's like me going to an antique fair. You know what? It could all be, just bogus, and I'd never know the difference of anything with an antique. I don't know it, but other people can look and just go, valuable.
Well, and this comes down to learning and constantly being on and being open to learning.
Yes.
I caught a vinyl community video this morning, for example. Younger kid who the title was he had found this ultra rare Beatles White Album.
I saw that.
And my first reaction was like, a little bit of an eye roll. Okay, yeah, right, because everybody says that they've got this super rare Beatles album. But I watched it anyway, and I was completely wrong about him. I mean, the kid seemed a little nervous. I don't remember the channel. If I find it, I'll send you the link on that, or I'll put the link up. But he got into it, and my first thought was like, okay, he found a Beatles album with a number. Okay, that's not technically rare, but he had done his research, and kudos to him. And now I know that even though I do check White Albums when they come in, you've got to dig a little deeper. He found what was called a rare George Harrison mix of the White Album that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
And according to Discogs, a couple hundred people have this, but it comes down to being a certain code in the runout that denotes this weird pressing that got out somehow that's worth now about $1,000.
Wow.
So you learn.
You do.
I'm learning on this, so now I'm going to double check every single White Album I see just to make sure that it's not, it's not a $40 or $50 one versus this super rare one.
Yeah. Anytime you try to log in a Beatles album, I just get a migraine. It's just too much.
It takes a little practice.
I guess I'm just not going to hit the live. I may have one, but that's going to be fine. Someone's going to get a deal.
You're not going to obsess over it?
No, but we can go into being obsessive. And so... obsessive they label as they have more albums than they know what to do with, and they will even buy reissues of what they already own. They just want to buy. Oftentimes, it is quantity over quality. In fact, they may not even listen to anything, but an obsessive, one thing that really excites them is a dollar bin.
Yep.
Because, man, for $100, you can come back with a ton of albums.
And you have told me that you were in this category for the longest time when you started collecting, and I will admit I was as well.
Yeah, I was.
Early on.
I really wanted to have the world's biggest record collection. I wanted to have so many. My whole thought was I would have this big room and I would be surrounded by record albums, 4 sides. I came close to that. There's about 12,000 of them. But you do it by as you go in, you start going to the dollar bins. Looks interesting. You really don't even know what you're doing. Now, I did listen to everything that I had, but maybe once.
Yep.
And then it's filed away and never to be seen again. Because you keep bringing in stuff, and you're bringing in stuff. And you'll watch on YouTube, and there are these collectors. They just bring home piles, and you go, how can they? And I ask them, how do you listen to them? Well, we don't always get them. Eventually, we'll listen to them.
Yeah, it's someday we'll get to it type of thing. And that's, I think physically an impossibility once you get over a certain number of records. Not to mention the spatial issues that you'd be dealing with just to store that many.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine over in Canada, and he'll go out, and he just comes back with these piles of stuff, and he has storage in L.A. and in Canada,
Wow.
But he knows what he's looking for. He loves Canadian music, Canadian rock bands, and he'll just go out, and I'm just, where are you putting all this stuff? It just blows my mind, but it's what makes him happy. And again, I was there.
You got to be kind of careful because there is this subsection of collecting, and not just records, but everything, where it becomes almost a hoarding issue in some cases. And I've seen pictures of some record stores. I think I sent you a story a couple of years ago about this store that opens up only on special occasions, and they don't allow customers inside other than the desk area because it's just mammoth piles and columns, and you've got a little tiny path to walk through to get to the records. But for some reason, the owners know exactly where everything is. Yeah. So you got to kind of, I think, temper that a little bit to say, I'm obsessive about it, but I'm not going to cross that threshold into the hoarder category.
Yeah, I think when I think of the hoarder category, it's like, well, I have 10 of the exact same albums here. They're all Buck albums. There's no difference between any of them. They're all Terre Haute pressings, but they were just there for $1, so I bought them, and I'll buy all these. But I'm not selling them. I'm just keeping them.
That's where you, I think, get into some dangerous territory.
Yeah, you do.
Not to mention, too, with the storage, and I hate to bring up your situation and what happened, but that flood really made you rethink that entire I'm going to get and be obsessive about getting as many records as I can.
It did. It really, shall we say, it washed away the sins of the past. It made me realize and rethink how I collect. And it did. I totally changed on what I do, and I'm happy for it. I mean, I felt, for me, this was great. It was a very good switch. I mean, you don't want it to kind of go that route. It would have been nice to have sold them instead.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. But I mean, you made the best of really kind of a terrible situation, and you've come out the other end of that with a different attitude on collecting.
I have, and a very valuable collection.
Now, speaking of valuable, there's another type out there, the audiophile.
Yeah.
And we all know somebody like this.
Yes.
They've got a really great system and nothing but mo-fis and analog productions and stuff like that.
You can love them or you can hate them, and it does go that way within, within the vinyl community.
Oh, heck yeah, yes.
I mean, they are obsessed with finding the very best pressing, digital versus analog. Who pressed it? That becomes a big. I mean, I'm surprised at all the things about who pressed it, but it is important to them. And you go in, and it's probably like a museum. Look at this. I mean, there are probably spotlights on it, and wow, and your eyes go wide, and they can tell you anything you wanted to know. But if you can afford it and do that, great.
And that's just it, too, because for an audiophile, it's not just, I mean, the equipment has got to be there. Maybe they have, tube amplifiers or, $1,000 cartridges or something like that. But they've got the equipment to play these super high fidelity records. And again, it's not, that's a high-end game, and it's not for everyone.
I've seen these $20,000 turntables. It just blows my mind. When I started back up, I was watching some of these channels, and I was buying some of these audiophile albums. I was going after some of them, and then I just had to stop and think, wait a sec. My stereo system isn't even this type that I can discern the difference, and I'm getting older. And then I thought, boy, I spent all this for this when I could have got these other albums, and I backed off. I mean, I stopped, and I'm not going that route anymore. But it was so tempting because there's so much of it out there. 5 years ago it began to start. It was always just MoFi, right? And then, acoustic sounds comes in. Everybody
analog
else, productions.
Music on vinyl.
Everybody wanted to jump in on this because it is a high profit margin. You're going to make some bucks. It was just so tempting. But for me, it just became, when you start asking for over $100 for an album, if you can afford it, that's great. But I decided I don't think I can. Eventually, my wife's going to find out about it.
So the audiophile in you was having an inner argument with the obsessive in you, saying, I could buy this one record for $100, or I could buy 100 $1 records instead. You're battling that out like the little devils on your shoulder.
Yes. Collectors are schizophrenic.
But casual is up next as well on this list, isn't it?
Yes.
This one, I think, it is what it says, casual. Like, hey, man, it's just a record, man.
Yep. It just, what, I buy 5, 6, you just go out, hey, vinyl's in. Well, okay then, let's go buy some vinyl. But you're not at the record store every week or whatever. You're just, this is what I got. I'm happy with that. I was talking to, chatting on comments with a collector who had been buying, a lot of records, was really gotten into it. And then all of a sudden said, wait, I don't really need that. There's just certain ones I really like, and they sold off a whole bunch of their stuff, and they kept what they really, really want. They became casual, just I'll go out once in a while to get it, but what I got here is really good, and I'm really happy with it.
They're happy with maybe 20 to 50, maybe 100 records that they'll put into a heavier rotation because they know they're going to be listened to rather than thousands or tens of thousands where I'll listen to that someday.
Yeah. There was an Eric guy, he said, I cut it down to 400 albums, and I had, several thousand. I cut down to 400 that I listened to. He goes, I'm not really going to buy any more. These are my favorite albums, and every time I pull one, I'm happy, and I don't need anything else. Now, kudos to him. I can't do that. I want to try new things and see what's out there. But for him, he found his lane. He's not interested in what's new coming out there. This is what he likes. That's his focus.
I think sometimes life gets in the way of that as well.
It does, yeah.
As a younger adult, right after I got married, my wife and I was collecting. I had stuff coming in. I was probably a little obsessive about getting certain things and numbers of things. And then you start having kids. You start working at a full-time job. You're out of college and you're moving forward. There are other things that begin to take precedent in your life. And I think at that point I became casual. I still bought records, but nowhere near what I was bringing in. Well, because you got to buy diapers, you got to feed kids, you got to buy toys and stuff like that and go with that and enjoying that section of your life. I'm an empty nester now, and I think I'm going back in that other direction.
Yeah, well, it does. You have, you get a little more income because of that. You don't have all these other things. So, yeah, you want to jump into it. But also, I think as we get older, there's certain albums, nostalgia and all that comes into effect.
Which is another level of collecting, the nostalgist.
Yeah.
The folks who look back fondly and say, I remember that. I see these people, not a week goes by that I get somebody coming in and looking, then they say this is a trip down memory lane when they're walking through the store. I haven't seen that album since I was a kid. My grandparents used to have that polka album.
Yeah.
And that makes them feel good.
And it doesn't matter if it's colored vinyl, black vinyl, limited. They just want to relive that music. And the older you get, the more it happens because we all know the power of music is it brings back our memories. Yep. I think of these certain albums, Bachman Turnover Jive, Not Fragile, is so packed with memories. I put that on. I'm in the high school locker room. It is a big part of it. Boston from the 70s. The 80s, so many albums, it brings back that time, the happy stuff in life.
This is almost a gateway to the other types of collectors, too, because if you are someone, well, let's pick people in their 50s now, like me, in my late 50s, had albums for a long time. I never really embraced compact discs. I had a few. I never really embraced them. So it's not like I'm going back to vinyl, but a lot of people did. Mm-hmm. And then you take people that are younger who have always known only compact discs who are now kind of discovering this. Could that be a nostalgia factor for some of them too? I've had this on compact disc for years. Now I'm seeking it out on vinyl because.
Yeah, I think so. Though I lost all my CDs, there's a lot of them now. I buy the reissuing on vinyl, and I could still go back and buy that on CD, but I'd just rather have it on vinyl because it's kind of cool, and I wasn't able to get it back in the 90s or the early aughts, and now I can. And it's just certain albums that go, wow, that just, it brings back that memory from the 90s, and I don't want everything they make. It's that particular album is the one that really hit me.
We've talked also before about people discovering music through vinyl and, folks that may have always loved music but have only recently come around to getting into the collection of vinyl. That's a really new thing. Where would you put them in this category?
Would that be more casual?
I think it's maybe a transitional from casual to almost obsessive, but maybe working their way to lifer. Does that work?
Yeah, it works. Yeah, you can be in several. You're just working your way up to something much worse.
Kind of evolving. Now, what other? You said you had a lot of other categories to talk about here.
One was limited edition collecting.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yes.
You could kind of mesh them in with the audiophile, but not necessarily that high level. It's just hey, we're pressing 300 of this. You need it. You got to have it.
Yes, it's numbered. Oh,
Yep.
boy. And a real limited edition collector wants those early numbers. That becomes important to them. But, yeah, I have all these variants. So, it does. They don't want it on black vinyl. So they're not trying to be a completist with this. They just want anything they feel that's going to have value.
And there's kind of a little pride thing in there, too, by saying, I am one of 300 people in the world who owns this record.
Absolutely, there is.
Check me out.
Yes, yes. I'm going to put that on Facebook, and that's pretty cool. And we do as collectors. Wow, you got that.
Yeah, well, that's where the vinyl community and the Facebook pages help show that stuff off.
It does, and it's
a little
exciting.
Endorphins that kick off by people saying, "You are cool, man.
Yep.
Check you out." The same thing could be said for things like test pressings. I've got 1 or 2 test pressings in my collection. You know that there's 5 of them in the entire world that were made.
Yeah.
And, well, that's kind of cool.
It is. I used to have a few. I used to have some test pressings, and I was buying some of those. But then, once I redid the collection, I stopped because I wasn't playing them and that. But they are cool. Very neat. A category you could say is the hustler. This is a person, again, that knows how much records are worth, but they go on, they buy these large collections to sell them off.
They're the flipper.
Yeah, the flipper. They're going to keep what they want. Here's what I want.
Yep.
I'll keep this, and the rest I'm flipping. That's their whole purpose. But that's where they get their enjoyment. It's the hunt.
You're not tossing me in that category, are you, as a record store owner? Because I get collections, and sometimes I keep things from the collections, and sometimes I upgrade things.
Right, that's just called the benefit of the job, which is why everyone would like to own a record store, because then they could do that. Just most of us would go broke because we would keep everything.
I say it all the time, too. It's a good thing that we sell only records and not ice cream and French fries at the same time.
Yes.
Because otherwise, I'd be like that guy in Monty Python's Meaning of Life.
Yeah. How about the specialist? This is one, when you think about it, they have a very narrow focus. I'm only going to collect psych, 60s psych.
Okay, so you're talking genre specific.
Genre specific. Northern soul. Maybe it's only 45s of this particular Motown.
Or the dudes that collect Zamrock.
Yes, the Zamrock dudes. Yes, which is awful expensive to do, but it is. You put that focus in that, so you're just trying to get that, but you really don't want to branch into other areas because this is what I want. And it starts easy. You get the cheap stuff. And then you have all of it, and now you have to start paying the big bucks and start hunting and looking.
I guess I could be a little bit of a specialist because one of my niche collections that I like to go for are promotional albums. White label promos or radio station promos and the like. When I see them, I'm really a sucker for that. Yeah. And sometimes it's for a group that I know I want to collect and keep. Other times it's like, well, I'm not really fond of that group. A good one that came through the other day, good example, we had a JoJo Gunn album come through. They're cool. They're a nice 70s rock band. Yeah. But it was a white label promo, and I found myself looking at it going, maybe? Maybe?
Do I really need it? No. But, the thing with the specialists is what they like is the challenge of searching for a grail. That's where they find the fun. That's where it's exciting, because when you get it, again, the endorphins just kick in. Oh, my God, look what I got.
It's that you find that once-in-a-lifetime thing, and it's like, holy cow, you're right.
Yep. Here's one, the know-it-all collector. Now, this is a collector that collects maybe a little bit of everything from gospel, maybe to metal, to synth. They're just... when you look at their collection, they have something for every mood that you are in. Hey, I feel like this. I can put on this. I feel like that. They're always looking for something new to share with others.
That's cool, though. I mean, they're an expanded horizon type of collector.
Very much so, yes. Let's look all over the place and just try a little of this, try a little of that.
Thought you were almost referring to some of those you see in the vinyl community channels that say, well, I know this one for a fact is extra rare. And...
No. Well, yeah, that's also a know-it-all, too. Yep. Exactly. That kind of props into one of those other ones, I think. A couple others is called the perfectionist. Everything has to be perfect.
Okay.
I mean, it has to be pristine. Now, it doesn't mean they're an audiophile, but it's just that this cover there's no dents, there's no creases, no pops, no clicks. We look for the best of each particular copy.
We both know someone who collects only sealed records as well.
Exactly.
That would be,
Yes.
I think, in that category.
It would be.
And they don't open them.
They don't open them. Their whole enjoyment is, I have this big, large sealed record collection. It's what they like.
And I could open it if I wanted to.
Yes, if I wanted
Don't
to.
push me.
Yes, but when you look at it, it's not about quantity. It's about quality.
Yep.
And so it doesn't matter how many you have. Everything I do have is the best quality.
We do see that argument pop up from time to time, too. It's like, well, records are made to be played, but if that's your thing, then that's very cool. Say, well, maybe I've got a sealed copy of this, but I've also got a regular play copy of this. So
Yeah.
there you go. I can still play it.
And that does happen. I have MoFi that are sealed because I have a play copy of it. And currently I have this Jaw Wobble album that it's sealed because it goes for a lot of money sealed. I'm going, oh.
You were wrestling with the to seal or unseal.
Or not to seal. Yeah, to seal or not to seal. That was the question. The final one that I came up with here was called, we'll just call it husband/wife. And this is the collector that will never sell anything. They will go to their deathbed with that record collection. They can't. They don't want to. You know what? That collection is their life, and they are married to it. And till death do us part, you're not separating me from that.
If there was a way to take them with, they would probably try to figure that out.
They would. I think if you're a Viking, you're good to go because you can toss them all on the boat and set it on fire, and you can be encased within vinyl.
You could actually go the other way around in this too, because I had seen some news stories about a service that would take your cremated ashes and press them into a record.
Yes.
That's the opposite of that, but that causes all sorts of other problems. And I think that's a good topic for another day, is like what happens
It is.
after.
Yes.
If you spend all of your lifetime amassing these, no matter what kind of a collector you are, at some point in time, and again, I'll attest to this because I have brought in a couple of collections from recently deceased spouses who cared for that collection so much that those that are left don't know what to do with it.
I'm wrestling with that. I mean, and it's for real. And I mean, I'm really thinking about that. And yes, it is a topic.
It's a topic for another day. So where do you see yourself on this collection spectrum? What type of collector are you, Steve?
Well, I used to be that one that wanted quantity, really, that obsessive, have to have all of this. I kind of almost think I fit almost into that know-it-all category because I have such a broad range of what I like.
You are the type of guy that you've got punk that you can go to effectively, the Zamrock, jazz, psych. Yeah, you're well-rounded.
I even got there's heavy metal, and I'm always looking for something new. And that's what my channels is about, is to share it. I mean, listen to this is a brand new thing, Have you heard this album? And I get that's my enjoyment, is when you find something, especially a brand new group, and you listen to that. I mean, generally, when we start off, I'm throwing out brand new albums because that's my excitement, and it's learning something new. Now, I don't buy, I don't have any whatever Rodrigo gal, whatever, or Taylor Swift. Not that I don't have anything against them. I only have so much money and so much room. But I do like to try a lot of new things. Now, how about you?
Well, I think that I have evolved over my time. I began, I wouldn't call it collecting in my early years, my teens. We've talked about how we got started before. It wasn't so much as I was collecting vinyl, as I wanted music. And this is how we got music in the late 70s and early 80s. That's how you got it. It wasn't until my college years that I think I really began saying that this is a collection in earnest that I'm working on. And at that point, being college and young adult, it's a casual thing. As I get more money, you get the college degree, you get a job, then it became a little obsessive for me. Yeah. So I think that I was bringing in as much as I could bring in. Then, as I mentioned, kids come along, and it goes back a little bit into a more selective nature of collecting. And now that I have gone into the empty nest, but I also own a record store, I'm borderlining on that obsessiveness of bringing stuff in and keeping it or putting it out in the store and trying to make my mind up on what it is I want versus what I had. So I think I'm a real good amalgamation of everything that you've got there. At one point, obsessive, maybe working that way now, but now very selective. Maybe I'm a little bit of that the strategic completist, where you're looking at certain things, maybe an album or two that I'm getting multiple copies of, versus an artist that I've got multiple releases from. We didn't even get into bootlegs, did we?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story. But I think a lot of people will fall into some sort of cross type of categories on each of these. You may start one, move into another, and as your life changes and you evolve, you go from one type of record collector to another. Yeah. And that's where I stand, I think.
Yeah, a question I get asked a lot is, are you going to, bring your collection back down to the basement? You're going to move back down there again? And my answer is always no, because I don't want to have this huge space that would make me almost fall back to being that obsessive collector. I try to keep where I'm at, so I have to cull my collection. I have to pull stuff out and decide, okay, I need to get rid of this. And so that keeps me in line, because it's really easy when you're a collector to get all excited about this and want, oh man, I'll just buy a whole bunch more of this. But
I've got the space.
I have
Let's
the
fill
space.
it up.
Yes, that's what space is for. The space is there to be filled up.
So you temper that. But that's a good way to look at this too. And not only can keep yourself a little more financially reasonable with it, but something that's realistic that you can listen to, because that is the entire point of having a good record collection, is to be able to enjoy it and listen to it.
Yes, very much.
And
so.
if you've got too much, you can't go there easily.
Agreed.
Well, what type of record collector are you? We would like to hear from you. All you got to do is head over to our Facebook page, look for Two Guys Talking About Records. It's a great way to interact. Let us know what you think. Did we miss a category or two? Are there some other things that types of collectors that you think exist that we didn't hit upon?
That's right. Don't be embarrassed to tell us exactly what you are. We want to know.
Let us know. But as always, just look for us on iHeart and Spotify, and we'll get that playlist up on Spotify, speaking of that, so you can hear a few of the things that we have talked about.
Yep.
So that will do it for this week.
All right.
All right, Steve. Good talking to you as always, and thank you all for listening. And I think next week we're going to wrap up 2023 in style, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We are?
We are.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we are.
The question mark. The best ofs?
Yes, the best of.
The worst of?
Okay.
Not really, but we'll see where we go.
Yeah, the best of. I've been working on that a long time. Oh, man, there's a lot.
This is the time of year that we get all of these kind of compilations. Looking back at 2023, the highs, the lows, the discogs.
Yes.
Oops. All right. You folks have a great weekend. We will talk to you next time. But until then, I've been Jim, and I'm a record collector.
And I'm Steve. I'm a record collector.
I got that wrong. I'm tired because the dog got me up at 3 a.m.
No, I'm Steve. I'm now a record owner.
Oh,
man.
He said it.
Yes.
All right. We'll talk to you folks next week.